My name is Conor Casey. I'm the Labor Archivist, and that means Curator and Director of the Labor Archives, which is a part of the University of Washington Library Special Collections at the University of Washington. The Labor Archives is a community archive that was founded in 2010 to preserve, collect, and make accessible the records of working people in the Pacific Northwest as our collection scope. This is I think it might be my 10th or 11th SAA conference, and I'm here in my capacity both as a presenter and an attender, and I'm also the co-chair of the Labor Archives section of the Society of American Archivists. Yeah, it's been around for a while, and I think it was founded to coordinate the activities of different regional labor repositories, because there were places that were collecting the records of organized labor primarily as an outgrowth of that new wave of social history. Labor archives go back to Commons and the economists that were doing that, but there was also this new wave of not only wanting to get the records of organized labor, but also individual activists, and that was kind of an outgrowth of social history. And I think that there was a concern, there's a tension within topical archives, and I think particularly labor archives, about whether the strategy would be to centralize all these collections in one national repository as part of the documentation strategy, or whether it might be served by having regional ones. And so I think there's a debate within the profession, and I think this was an idea that they would coordinate so that people could talk with each other and say, oh, you have these collections and these collections, let's not poach each other's stuff, let's work in coordination with each other, realizing that maybe regional autonomy is something that's going to continue, but at the same time trying to work in concert with our efforts to make sure that the historical record doesn't suffer from the lack of coordination, but also that we serve our researchers better, I think, and our end users by trying to coordinate activities to make sure that they know about us. Those could be, in terms of stakeholders, labor historians or other folks interested in social history or economic history, but it also could be, the unions themselves, community members, maybe the public at large that don't know that these are the collections that are reflecting their history. So what I see as being I've been a section co-chair since 2011 or 2012. There's been a gap in there because of term limits, but I've pretty much been a co-chair in there for that length of time. I think my main objectives as section co-chair have been to make sure that we have a robust presence and an active presence at SAA. At one point in time, they were considering folding smaller or less active sections or roundtables into larger ones, or doing away with them altogether. They changed that strategy, and I'm glad about that, but we had to prove our relevance for a while, and I wanted to make sure one thing we always did was to at least have a proposal for a session on the main program for SAA every year, so that it was sort of our section branded or topical focus. I think that my goals for the section, and this probably complements or expands on ideas that have come before me but I'm less aware of, so I would have to make sure that I'm not trying to frame this as I'm the only person who came up with this, but my own preoccupation mirrors my involvement in labor archives. And so I became a labor archivist, or have been in the world of labor archives for about 20 years. I had the title of archivist since 2004. I started working at the Labor Archives at San Francisco State around 2001. And what I learned there was that oftentimes there are these co-occurring intersectional collections. It's not just organized labor, it's also workers' rights and struggles, LGBTQA+, civil rights struggles are of necessity, almost always labor struggles, because discrimination in employment has cascading effects, right? And sometimes the organizing activity is in relation to the labor movement itself. For example, restrictive apprenticeship programs, tradeswomen and men of color had to organize to be able to get in there. So we're trying to realize that the world of work has a much broader scope, and trying to reveal those collections so that they're in dialogue with one another, while bolstering these amazing organized labor and union collections. A lot of these archives got started either with the co-foundership or because of the donation or financial support of many major unions. But that doesn't mean that we can't look at the work life stories of people in our regions to make sure that it's really understood what it means to work, because I think that's how we transform the environment in our regions. We, as people who are working people, right, how do we stake a claim in the regional history so it's not just the story of technology or the boosters or the businesses. We built these things, and the things didn't just happen because somebody had a vision and then it got done. I think anybody who is the steward of collections that document labor should be considered joining. I mean, I think it's really, if they see it as a significant portion of their holdings and they think that it would be interesting to be in dialogue or want to be part of our projects such as the Labor Archives Directory so that researchers can find their collections across all these different, we think it's hard enough for us to find these collections across things, and we're experienced looking for it, right? And we're topical experts or have experience at least. Can you imagine what it's like to be a researcher who has to navigate not only the topic, but also our arcane system of finding aids and weird, split, balkanized finding aid systems and regional repositories and stuff? I think the goal is to try to figure out if we can unite it to make it as user-friendly as possible. And so I would invite everybody, anybody who thinks that they're interested in the dimension of labor that is already in their collections. Huge repositories like the National Archive or the Bancroft Library, different historical societies, they all have stuff that relates to the world of work, and I just don't think that they know that this roundtable is for them if they want to highlight some of it. And so we have ongoing initiatives that will help kind of unite that topically. I think one of the challenges in my repository is that it's a hybrid position that's a community archives located within a university library, within a special collections, funded partially externally by a labor institute, right? Labor Studies Institute. And so having to navigate those different stakeholder and donor and institutional missions is a challenge because you have to balance what each one of those things wants from you and also what you want from them. And so, working within a broader special collections, how can I make sure that the priorities or the agenda or the resources that have been entrusted to me as an externally funded community thing, how do I make sure that we're accountable to that community that put us in that position? How do I make sure that I represent accurately the prerogatives of special collections of the university to the labor community, because they're providing great service and a great thing to the general public. So how do I tell the public what we're offering them, these great direct services? How do I talk to the Labor Studies Institute about how popular projects that aren't based in research are useful too, right? And how do we make sure that they see that the efforts that they've done to found us as an ongoing mission are bearing fruit, but also get the resources we need in relation to that? How do we maintain our autonomy and accountability within a broader institution like the libraries of the university? These are all continual negotiations or struggles, or we have a memorandum of understanding that delineates our relationship, but it's not everyone follows it, or not everyone understands it the same way. So how do I, as somebody who has to be in between all these things, how do I make that real, and how do I navigate that? To me, it's an ethical thing to be able to live up to the letter of the law, because to me, I live in the world where collective bargaining agreements or memorandums of understandings or all these other things actually have tangible meanings about recorded duties or obligations. And so I feel a responsibility to try to make sure that I live up to what I'm supposed to be doing within that.